Hello, the student of honors first year. Welcome to my class. Here is Aisha Khatun, lecturer, Department of English, Tungi Government College, Gazipur. Hope you all are safe and sound by the Almighty Allah, and of course doing well in your studies. So, we have already come to know about the summary of the story The Garden Party by Katherine Mansfield. So this is our session 2 about the short story The Garden Party. So after knowing the summary or the story of the text, today we will continue to know about the main theme of this story. So before going to discuss the main theme, let's have something know about the garden party. So after observing the dead body of Scott, Laura does recognize the tragedy in his death and exclaim, "Forgive my hat," before running out of the house and meeting her brother Laurie on the road outside. So we have just end up our story where you all come to know that Laura observed the dead body of Mr. Scott, and when she just observed it, she found his face so calm, so innocent, so beautiful. So it's give her a transition in his thinking, in her thinking, in her observation. So on that time, just she started running out of the house and meeting her brother Laurie on the road outside. He embraces and comforts her as she cries out, but does not understand that hers are tears of joy. Laura starts to explain what she has realized, but cannot finish her sentence. "Isn't life?" she says, and the story ends with the narrator's insistence that Laurie quite understood, and his entirely empty response, "Isn't it, darling?" So, if a tragedy occurs moments just before an extravagant event that you planned, would you cancel it? Unlike just before the party is scheduled to begin, Laura learns that a man from a cottage down the road was thrown from his house and killed, leaving behind a wife and 5 children. Laura learns about social class and death through this experience. So let's examine the theme in this story. So the writers actually tried to highlight or revolves around many different themes through the characters of Laura in this story. So here the main themes of the story we'll try to find out that in the following way. So at the very beginning, we found that life is one of the upleading themes in this story. Life, the prevailing theme in the garden party and other stories in the examination of life and its particularities. Each of the stories focuses on a specific moment in time in the lives of the characters. The story's narratives encompass an examination of those lives, concentrating on the opinions, emotions, dreams, fears, and especially the innermost anxieties of the main characters. Mansfield was not interested in a grand or explaining pictures of life. Instead, she focused on the trivialities, the small moments that linger in the minds of her characters, and acted as epiphanies, making way for character transformation and new beginnings. So Mansfield was particularly interested in how women view the world and features several female protagonists, a unique point of view of her time period. Next, one of the leading theme in the story is that death. Though Death is a minor theme in comparison to life, but death is the catalyst by which change occurs in a number of key stories within the overall work. Mr. Scott's death in this story awakens in Laura Sheridan a dislike of her family's elitism. Her immediate thoughts is to stop the party because it would be too difficult for the widow and her 5 children to hear the joyful music. She thinks it seems insensitive to have good time while their neighbors are suffering. So this indicates the difference between insensitivity and sensitivity. Laura's journey across to the threshold of the Scott's dwelling represents her transition from sheltered adolescence to the maturity of adulthood. In confronting the reality of death, Laura learns something about the nature of life and living. Laura is unable to fully communicate her experience with death at the conclusion of the story, suggesting that her epiphany goes largely beyond words. Another theme is social class, or you may call the social distinction. Laura Sheridan has conflicting thoughts about social class. In the story, the writer built on the contrast between families from 2 social strata, the wealthy upper class Sheridans and the working class people. The upper class people spare very little thought or concern for the working class people. People like them don't expect sacrifices from us, says Mrs. Sheridan. When Laura asks to cancel the party after hearing the death news of their neighbor, Scott. So here you can have the idea that what type of thinking actually does pose by the upper class people for the working class people during that time. It means that Mansfield time. Moreover, they don't want to be inconvenienced by a working class tragedy, but expect their leftovers to be appreciated. So this is the only so silly things that is done by the upper class people to the working class or the low class people. So this class prejudice doesn't sit well with Laura. Here, such type of mentality doesn't possess by the protagonist Laura. While outside with the workmen, she tells herself that she would rather do away with these absurd class distinction and be friend with everyone. This attitude makes her feel noble, but it's not natural for her. Laura instinctually notices differences in wealth and class just as her mother and sister do. So these differences in Laura is that she doesn't believe these distinctions are meaningful. She wants to treat all people the same way, no matter how much money they have or where they live in. She finds this difficult to do from her privileged perch. Besides, innocence and experience is also one of the noticeable themes in this story. The garden party traces the psychological and moral growth of Laura Sheridan. The story represents her adolescent confusion regarding the social values of her family and her awakening to a more mature perception of reality after the exposure to poverty and death at the Carter's cottage. Again, her self-consciousness regarding her own youth and inexperience is evident whenever she encounters the members of the working class. However, this story reflects many other themes also, like leisure. When the upper class people are planning that how they will spend their leisure with more fun. On the other hand, the working class people are working that they are working to execute their plan that how they will spend their leisure with more fun. Again, the themes like childhood, family, independence also portrayed in this story more successfully. And beauty, you may call that the upper class people, to them beauty is just all. how their appearance, in their garden party decoration, in their gesture, in everything. Just beauty must be the common, or must be the first things that should be noticeable by all the guests. So here beauty to the upper class people means a lot. On the other hand, detachment, yes, this is a very very shocking thing, is that as the working class people are working for the upper class people, but the upper class people, they don't have any sympathy or don't have any feelings for the working class people, and they always try to maintain a detachment from these working class people. So here this type of mentality you will be found in the Mrs. Sheridan's attitude in this story. Okay, so after learning all these story, all these themes of the story, one question may arise in your mind that, so what is the main theme I can call in this story through on this story? So I can, into my opinion, that I think it's debt. Debt is the great leveler. Whoever we are, wherever we live, how much money we have or don't have, we will one day leave this earth behind. In death, there is no class distinction, no artificial differences between race, gender, and class. Death is the ultimate, perhaps the only true democracy. The notion of death as the great laborer as much in evidence in Mansfield, the Garden Party. Here, the death of one of Laura's working class neighbors momentarily serves to break down the class barrier between them. What had been thought to be an inseparable barrier between Laura's upper class crust family and her down at heel neighbors has shown to be wholly artificial, and therefore capable of being broken down by a shared experience, the experience of death. So, to be sure, Laura's experience of her neighbor's death might not be the same as that of the dead man's family or the other members or people of any society, but it does nonetheless serve to establish some kind of connection between them as well. So, through the character of Laura, the writers actually tried to portray such type of attitude, such type of mentality that possessed by the upper class people, that is represented by Laura. So this should be the mentality, this should be the attitude for all men, for attitude to all, for the all classes of people. So thank you everyone. I think you all have come to know about the summary or the main theme of the story as well. And before going to conclude my class, I would like to request you that please try to read about the main text of this story. It will give you a much understanding or give you much fun, or I think you will also try to find out some realization like the character of Laura as well. So thank you everyone for being with me. Thank you everyone.